Welcome to the show. Fun, fitness, wellness and inspiration. If you're over 50, you've come to the right place. I'm Carol. For our wellness segment today, we're chatting to Jodie Atkinson, author of Have You Met My Grief? Some of us might have lost a partner, a pet, or even a child. We're going to chat about tips and strategies to help us through and also support others with managing loss. Unfortunately, most of us haven't been taught what to do, so we often muddle through. After the fun 5-minute fitness with fabulous Faye showing the chair option, we meet some inspirational ladies from a U3A writers group. They're finding writing great fun later in life. Maybe you've thought about writing and just didn't know where to go to get started. A writers group could be just the thing for you. Stay watching. Many of us in a relationship suspect that we may outlive our partners. But we don't expect this to happen until we're in our 80s or 90s. Sadly, some of us lose our partners much younger, in their 50s or 60s. And sometimes it can be quite sudden. Managing grief is a challenging process. Today we're chatting with Jodie Atkinson, grief recovery specialist and author of Have You Met My Grief? Hi Jodie, welcome to Over 50 So What? Great to have you on the show.
Hi, Carol. Thank you for having me. It's such a privilege to be here.
I'm so glad our paths crossed because this is such a topic, grief, that we haven't covered in our show at all. And, almost weekly I'm meeting people who are experiencing the loss of a loved one. How have you got into this area and become a grief recovery specialist?
Yes, it's through lived experience that I find myself here. In 2019, my husband suddenly was experiencing some health issues that were really unusual for him. And we learned that he had stage 4 metastatic pancreatic cancer. And of course, our whole life was just completely ripped apart. Life as we knew it was completely changed. And after losing him to that cancer, I discovered a thing or two about grief that I didn't know. I just felt like this hole I fell into didn't exist. And then suddenly I did know it existed, and it didn't feel right to walk away from it knowing other people potentially find their own way into it too, without offering some form of help. So I became a grief recovery specialist.
So what were your biggest challenges when you were going through this initial loss?
The biggest challenges were, of course, feeling like part of yourself is missing. I felt like I was going mad. The things that I was experiencing were really odd for me. I've never experienced anxiety and panic and fear the way that it did show up for me. And being sort of bouncing from foggy and numb and disconnected, no one really talks about what grief looks like or can show up like. So I really struggled with trying to understand what was happening to me. I didn't feel connected to my place in the world like I used to. And it was really, really scary. And trying to explain that to people, from my perspective, it felt like people were looking at me going, whoa, like you have lost your mind, feeling completely, I don't know, overwhelmed by such big, intense emotions, and knowing that people were struggling with how to connect with me, and people that I thought might reach out for me disappeared.
Well, we hope that after having a few chats with you, we'll also help people understand how to relate to someone else who's going through that loss, because that is a big challenge and we don't talk about, we're not educated on it. It just doesn't come up. Everyone just takes a guess at what they should be doing.
A big thing I've learned is that people will put their perception across what they feel you might be experiencing, and they can quite often be so off target. You don't really know how I feel, so don't say that you do. How about you just ask me how I feel and let me tell you? And please don't question my feelings. Don't judge me and how I'm trying to navigate this. It's all brand new to me too. So certainly creating opportunities to talk about it so that if and when we find ourselves in this space, it's not completely foreign.
Are there any other specific things that stand out to you that are quite common with people going through grief?
one thing I've learned is that through sharing my experience, people have gone, "Oh, thank goodness, I'm not losing my mind. You've made me feel like I'm quite normal in what I'm experiencing." So that's a big thing. I think people often will express that people don't know how to speak to them. They don't know what to say. They'll quite often say the usual types of things we're used to hearing. Those are the things that can lead to people shutting down and not communicating how they're feeling because they don't feel safe.
We definitely will talk about, approaching a person who is experiencing loss, and we'll do, quite in-depth dive into that bit. Now, we used to, for years and years, talk about the 5 stages of grief, but this current thinking is not like that. Can you go through what the current thinking is?
The beautiful Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did work in this space. What she came up with, the stages of grief, would be a description of what someone might go through in that situation. It was never meant to be prescriptive, but somehow the stages were implemented into the space where people grieving a loss might go through. And a lot of people found it's not a stage by stage thing. And quite often people don't necessarily identify with a particular stage, or in what the language that I hear is a label. Grief is messy. It's really hard to put a specific kind of formula in place, I guess. And it's really just about letting people experience their grief. It's really unusual, unique to the individual, how that's going to show up. Like family members will all grieve differently. No one's wrong, right? They're all it's unique to the individual because they've all got a unique relationship with that person.
So what are your top tips for managing the loss of a loved one? We'll have people today who may have lost someone in the last 6 months, 12 months, and they're still not sure what they should be doing. What are your top tips?
I found when I pushed back on it and tried to push through and resist the emotions that were surfacing, I came off second best every time. So I think learning to not fight your grief, accept that this is a really unpredictable emotional period that you're going to go through, and allow it to be what it is, and don't try and rush that. Finding the support that works for you is really important. People that don't necessarily judge you or ask you lots of questions. They're just prepared to sit and listen to you and listen to your body. So if you need to take time out, take time out. If you're sleeping in the middle of the day, you're sleeping in the middle of the day. Your routines will change, your patterns, your eating, everything changes.
If someone wants some additional support, like they want to seek out a grief recovery specialist or some other information, what do you recommend?
It's really unique to the individual. Some people will find bereavement counselling a way that they want to go. Some people will tap into their faith. Some people will want to maybe go to a bereavement group with grief recovery specialists like myself. You can search for us. You can find us on the Grief Recovery Specialist or Grief Recovery Institute, and we do have one here in Australia. We can work with you online or we can meet with you in person.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. That's been a great overview and some great pearls of wisdom there for also being more sensitive to others that have lost loved ones. Thank you, Jodie. Thanks for watching our TV show. Be sure to hit subscribe and then you'll never miss an episode. Jump on Facebook, join our group, get in on the fun, fitness, wellness and inspiration. I'm Carol, over 50. So what?